Look at the geography. Look at Siberia, a massive, empty space, the largest forest on the planet, yet containing millions of square miles of unnaturally flat and monotonous tundra and steppe. They tell you this is nature. This is the biggest, most terrifying geographical lie created by the 19th century elite. Siberia was not empty. It was emptied. The scale of forest loss in Siberia cannot be explained by natural fires or traditional 19th century logging. Not just trees disappeared. An entire climatic region vanished, leaving behind billions of stumps that prove this was a massive, military act of destruction necessary to undermine the remnants of Siberian Tartaria. Why the destruction? Siberian Tartaria was not just an empire, it was a global climate control center. Its vast forests and river systems were key to planetary weather regulation. The 19th century elite, seizing this technology, used climate manipulation to turn Siberia into permafrost, isolating themselves from the Tartarian energy grid and its possible counterattacks. This investigation will expose the faked expedition photographs that mask evidence of mass destruction, reveal the technology that allowed them to control the weather and cause global cold snaps, and show the purpose of the strange stone pits left in the empty land. Watch until the very end, subscribe this channel, like this video, and you will learn the name of the secret military base built on the site of the Siberian Weather Control Center. Siberian Tartaria was the last line of defense against the global reset. It could not be defeated by conventional means. It possessed technology that could rapidly restore the planet after the mud flood. Thus, the 19th century cabal launched an ecological destruction campaign of unprecedented scale. They needed to not just cut down the trees, they needed to change the atmosphere. The disappearance of the forest created a geographical vacuum that allowed them to manipulate zonal flows and cool an entire region, effectively freezing the remnants of Tartaria. The scale of the logging was so vast, it couldn't have been done with axes. The next segment will expose the shocking evidence that sonic and plasma weaponry was used for this great cut, leaving behind unique, unnatural stumps. The official story that the Siberian forests were cut down for building or burned in natural fires is absurd. No human civilization of the 19th century had the manpower or logistics to process such a massive amount of timber in this remote territory. This was the Great Cut, and it required technology. Analysis of old Siberian photographs and expedition reports reveals two key pieces of evidence. 1. Unnatural uniformity. In large areas, the territory was not just logged. It was sheared to the ground with a surgical precision impossible to achieve with axes or even primitive sawmills of the time. 2. Plasmic stumps. The remaining stumps, photographed by early explorers, have unique, melted or charred edges that do not correspond to ordinary fire. We assert that these are the traces of high-energy Tartarian weaponry, possibly plasma or sonic, seized and used by the elite for rapid, unprecedented destruction. Why such an energy expenditure? It was important for the cabal to not just destroy the forest, but to neutralize the energy properties of the trees. Tartarian trees, acting like giant antennas, were part of the global free energy grid. Their rapid destruction destabilized the climate and cut off the energy flow to Siberia. The Great Cut was an act of energy warfare. The destruction of the forests was a physical act of war, but strange scars remained on the land itself. The next segment will expose the true purpose of the massive Siberian stone pits. They were not quarries. They were craters from giant explosive weapons. In the middle of the devastated Siberian landscape are bizarre, gigantic stone pits, labeled as quarries, but they resemble no quarry known to the 19th century. They have rounded, unnaturally deep forms and traces of extreme, sudden heating and pressure. The official story claims these pits were created for stone extraction. This is a lie. We assert that these features are 1. Cosmic/energy weapon craters. These are the sites where the 19th century elite tested or directed the remnants of Tartarian energy weapons. The extreme force of the explosion literally melted and vaporized the rock, leaving behind only a solidified scar. 2. Tunguska-related artifacts. Many of these pits are located along a line that may be related to the 1908 Tunguska event, which we assert was not a natural meteorite, but a controlled, failed energy explosion aimed at destroying a last known Tartarian center. Furthermore, surrounding these pits, early explorers found remnants of strange, melted metallic artifacts, evidence of technology that could not exist in the 19th century. These artifacts were quickly seized and classified as meteorite fragments to support the deception. The stone pits are graves of destroyed Tartarian technology. The stone pits proved destruction, but the real control was overhead. The next segment will reveal how the 19th century elite seized and deployed a planetary climate weapon of Tartaria, causing inexplicable global cold snaps. The greatest crime of the 19th century was climatic. Siberian Tartaria possessed a global weather control system, using ionospheric plasma and geothermal energy channels to regulate the climate. After defeating Tartaria, the Cabal seized this technology. They could not fully understand the entire system, but they understood how to use it as a weapon of mass retardation. 1. Permafrost creation. Through manipulation of regional atmospheric flows and Tartaria's geothermal outlets, they turned most of Siberia into permanent permafrost. This was necessary to seal the remnants of Tartaria under ice and make the territory uninhabitable. 2. Global cold snaps. The inexplicable, sudden global cold snaps recorded in the late 19th century, even in the United States and Europe, were not natural. They were side effects or direct testing of this climate weapon, used for geographical control. The elite presented these changes as natural variations or a minor ice age. But this was active interference, designed to destroy agricultural self-sufficiency and solidify their control over the remaining resources. Siberia became the testing ground for global climate warfare. The climate war was hidden by scientific lies, but geographical control required visual deception. The next segment will reveal how faked expedition photographs of the 19th century were used to portray Siberia as a natural wilderness, concealing the traces of technological destruction. To sell the narrative that Siberia was a natural wasteland, a vast, untouched, inhospitable land, the 19th century Cabal relied on faked expedition photographs. These images, which you see in official archives, are meticulously staged visual novels. Official photographs of Siberian expeditions often show 1. Absence of technology. Scenes were carefully cleaned of any evidence of large-scale technological intervention, including the charred remains of giant stumps, strange metallic artifacts, or traces of military presence. 2. Exaggeration of wildness. Expedition groups were deliberately dressed in cumbersome, primitive clothing and often posed against small, isolated groups of trees to create the illusion of an untouched, natural forest, rather than a technologically devastated wasteland. The photographers working for the official geographical societies were censors, not chroniclers. Their mission was to create a collective world memory that Siberia had always been such a void. This lie justified geographical control and concealed the territory's true purpose, a cache of remaining Tartarian technology. The visual lie was successful, but what happened to the people? The next segment will expose the chilling fate of the indigenous peoples of Siberia, the last known guardians of Tartarian knowledge, and how they were erased from the historical map. The physical destruction of the Siberian forest was only half the battle. The Cabal needed to eliminate the indigenous peoples of Siberia, the last known custodians of Tartarian knowledge and the inheritors of its massive, decentralized power centers that you've seen, the plasmic stumps. If this evidence confirms the deliberate erasure of an entire population, make sure you subscribe to the Epoch Reset channel and hit the like button right now, because we are about to reveal the true purpose of the Siberian famine and disease outbreaks that were used as a weapon. Official history claims that the indigenous populations of Siberia simply succumbed to 19th century diseases and famine brought by settlers. This is a deliberate, cruel misrepresentation. We assert that these populations were victims of a systematic, bioengineered elimination campaign, combined with the engineered climate collapse. The controllers understood that the indigenous communities, who lived in harmony with the Tartarian energy grid, possessed critical knowledge about its maintenance and activation. By using biological warfare, purposefully spreading certain pathogens, and destroying the natural resources through the Great Cut, the Cabal achieved two goals. 1. Elimination. They destroyed the primary knowledge base of the Tartarian system. 2. Resource seizure. They justified the seizure of massive mineral and crystalline deposits located beneath the land formerly inhabited by these groups. The massive depopulation of Siberia was not a tragic accident of history. It was a calculated military cleansing essential for the full geographical control of the Tartarian heartland. The greatest long-term achievement of the 19th century cover-up in Siberia was the permanent freezing of the ground itself. This act of geoengineering was necessary to neutralize the vast underground Tartarian infrastructure. We know that the Tartarian cities relied on geothermal heat exchangers and a deep network of power conduits to keep the subsoil stable and the climate temperate. The Cabal's genius was in realizing that by severing the surface connections and rapidly cooling the atmosphere, the weather weapon, they could initiate a catastrophic freeze-out of the underground infrastructure. The spreading permafrost was a direct result of this engineered freeze-out. The massive, uncontrolled freezing created immense pressure, crushing the remaining crystal cores and fracturing the underground conduits. This rendered the surviving subterranean Tartarian centers permanently inaccessible and inactive. The 19th century exploration reports about the difficulties of permafrost were not about natural geography. They were about the consequences of the energy warfare. The Siberian permafrost is the massive geological tombstone of the last great Tartarian civilization. This freeze-out was the ultimate defense mechanism for the new rulers. Amidst the chaos of the Great Cut, the indigenous custodians managed to hide one final critical artifact, a device intended to preserve and transmit their history to future generations. This is the Siberian time capsule, recovered only decades later. This artifact is a complex, perfectly sealed cylindrical container, typically found near the largest stone pits, weapon craters. It was not designed to hold physical objects, but encoded information. We believe it contains 1. Tartarian blueprints, schematics for weather control, free energy, and anti-gravity technology. 2. Historical narrative. The giant's true account of the mud flood and the subsequent 19th century takeover. The time capsule was designed to survive the permafrost and the extreme conditions of the geo-engineered wasteland. Its sealing mechanism and material composition are far beyond 19th century metallurgy. The elite were desperate to find these capsules, as their contents would immediately and irrefutably expose the entire global lie. The 19th century military operations in Siberia were not just about bombs. They were about locating and neutralizing these information caches before their contents could be revealed to the wider world. The time capsule represents the ultimate Tartarian trust in future resistance. The controllers had successfully engineered a geological wasteland, but they still needed to sell the idea of a natural wilderness. The 19th century media establishment produced fake documentary records showing the land's wild, untouched nature. These fake documentaries, often presented as scientific studies or travel films, deliberately focused on 1. Small trees and new growth, carefully framing shots to include only newly grown, small, weak trees, giving the impression that the forest was naturally sparse, hiding the fact that massive, ancient trees have been destroyed in the Great Cut. 2. Primitive wildlife, exaggerating the danger and isolation of the wildlife, reinforcing the idea that the land was too hostile for human settlement or advanced civilization. The entire visual representation of Siberia in the 19th century was a scenic fabrication. It was a massive piece of visual propaganda designed to convince the public that the emptiness was natural and that no sophisticated civilization could have ever existed there. This visual lie secured the narrative of the new rulers. The indigenous custodians of Tartarian knowledge left behind one final, heartbreaking artifact to guide future researchers. This is the Shaman Stone, a unique, oversized, carved stone that was dismissed as a religious idol. This stone artifact is often found near the stone pits and energy craters. Its unusual weight and material composition are not the main clue. The key is the intricate, repetitive carving on its surface. These carvings, while appearing to be religious symbols, are actually a three-dimensional geological map of the remaining Tartarian infrastructure in the Siberian interior. The indigenous shamans, who understood the codes, carved the locations of 1. Intact conduits, unfrozen, accessible underground Tartarian energy pathways. 2. Hidden time capsules, the precise coordinates of the information caches. The 19th century anthropologists and collectors, failing to recognize the stone as a functioning map, simply cataloged it as an artifact of primitive culture. This act of academic dismissal provided the perfect cover for the map, ensuring that the controllers themselves overlooked its strategic importance. The shaman stone is the architectural plan for the final Tartarian resistance, to solidify the lie of the natural wilderness. The 19th century elite had to fabricate the scientific evidence. We exposed the faked geological surveys of Siberia, official documents that were designed to cover up the massive, rapid freeze-out. You have seen the plasmic stumps and the time capsule. If this evidence confirms the scientific conspiracy, make sure you subscribe to the Epoch Reset channel and hit the like button right now, because we are about to reveal the internal memo proving that 19th century geologists were ordered to ignore evidence of recent freezing. The geological surveys published during the late 19th century systematically presented the Siberian permafrost as an ancient, stable, natural phenomenon. This was achieved by 1. Ignoring the mud flood layer. Surveys deliberately failed to report the uniform layer of mud flood sediment found beneath the surface, which would indicate a recent catastrophic event. 2. Fabricating depth. Data was manipulated to exaggerate the depth and age of the permafrost, reinforcing the millions of years chronological buffer. This scientific fabrication was essential. The false surveys neutralized any potential academic inquiry into the engineered climate change. They guaranteed that any subsequent explorer would accept the natural explanation, effectively sealing the Tartarian ruins beneath the ice. The Trans-Siberian Railway, one of the most celebrated engineering feats of the late 19th century, was not primarily built for economic development. It was built for military control and artifact logistics. The colossal effort required to lay tracks across the frozen, empty wasteland was wildly disproportionate to the expected economic return. This railway was essential for 1. Artifact seizure. It provided the logistical spine for the military to quickly move and extract massive Tartarian artifacts, like the sonic weapon parts and time capsules, out of the remote interior. 2. Quarantine enforcement. The rail line created a controlled, linear military presence across the vast region, allowing the elite to enforce the geographical quarantine around the frozen Tartarian centers. The 19th century propaganda presented the railway as a symbol of progress and unification. The reality was that it was a military supply line for the Great Cut and the subsequent cleanup operation, ensuring that the wealth and technology of Tartaria flowed directly into the hands of the controlling oligarchy. The discovery of perfectly preserved mammoths in the Siberian permafrost during the 19th century is the final, haunting proof of the rapid, unnatural climate shift. These animals were not naturally frozen. The sudden, widespread freezing of these massive animals, often found with undigested food in their stomachs, proves that they were victims of a rapid, catastrophic cold event. This event was not the slow creep of natural history. It was the engineered freeze-out executed by the controllers. The mammoth finds were exploited by the 19th century scientific establishment to reinforce the false geological narrative. They claimed the animals were evidence of ancient, natural ice ages, thus masking the fact that the freezing was a recent, technological act of war. The mammoth remains are the tragic, biological proof of the Tartarian climate catastrophe. The sudden 19th century mining booms across Siberia were not based on traditional gold or coal. They were a cover for extracting Tartarian technology components and rare crystalline elements necessary for anti-gravity and energy research. The mining operations, often highly secretive and backed by powerful financial interests, consistently focused on areas identified in Tartarian blueprints as subterranean energy conduits or crystal deposit sites. The miners were not looking for conventional resources. They were looking for the raw materials of the lost civilization. The military presence around these mines was overwhelming, and the official records of the extracted materials were systematically falsified. This final resource seizure was the ultimate step in ensuring that the 19th century elite maintained a permanent technological monopoly over the world. We have exposed the final lies of the Siberian cover-up, the engineered freezing, the military railways, and the faked geological surveys. The vast, empty wasteland is not a natural phenomenon. It is a monument to the Tartarian genocide and the technological seizure by the 19th century cabal. The ultimate lesson of Siberia is a warning. The controllers of the world have mastered planetary-scale geoengineering and climate warfare. They used it once to eliminate Tartaria, and they possess the capability to use it again. That we have revealed the military's role in the Great Cut and the true purpose of the Trans-Siberian Railway. If this video has opened your eyes to the shocking truth of climate warfare, then subscribe to Epoch Reset, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment below right now. Tell us, do you believe the climate instability the world faces today is a residual side effect of the 19th century Tartarian climate weapon? And is the Siberian permafrost still hiding the functional remains of the Weather Control Center?